Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and I'm going to go over this Week 8 main slate with everybody. Going to take a look at some potential games that might be a little lower owned that we can focus on for game stacks, and not really any too many cheap stacks that I like this week. So I'm just going to call it a stack show this week. We'll take a look and see what is popping off on my spreadsheet this week. There's a lot of interesting games this week. It's a low scoring week, it seems, and that's always a good thing because that gives us more opportunity to pick out games that could go over the total and beat some of those main games, which is what we're looking for when we're trying to do these shows. So before I get into this analysis, why don't you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button on the channel. Make sure you're subscribing to this page. I recorded a showdown show for Sunday Night Football with Spread a Stare earlier. We've had some good success on those shows, and I think we got another good angle for the Sunday night game. So you're going to want to subscribe to the YouTube page and check out that video as well. But for now, we'll get into this main slate here. Let's see. So the games this week, the ones that pop out of the page the most to me are Philly versus Washington. They've played each other close the last few times they faced off, and including this year when Washington almost upset Philly. This week they get to face off again, and it should be pretty interesting. It's in Washington this week, so that's a good thing because that means that it gives us the opportunity for the underdog to pull something off this week. And Philly's going to have no problem putting up points, and with the way that Philly's defense has been lately, Washington should have no problem putting up points either. So with a total of 43.5 in a game like that, that is a type of game that I think could definitely go over. We'll take a look at that one a little bit more in depth. Houston, Carolina is another game that I'm interested in this week. Seems like that one's going to be a little bit chalky this week, so that kind of sucks. But I do like that game. We got the number 1 draft pick going up against the number 2 draft pick in C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young. I think Stroud was the number 2. They were the number 1 and 2 quarterback picks at least, and they're facing off against each other. There's going to be ego involved between not only the players but also the coaches and the organizations behind those players, because Carolina doesn't want to be shown up for making the wrong decision with Bryce Young. So that they're going to be putting a little bit special attention to trying to win that game. So that's going to be an interesting game this week. I also think the Jacksonville-Pittsburgh game is going to be interesting this week. There is a little bit of weather concern there. I want to make sure that there's not going to be heavy rain in that game tomorrow. We got a quarterback with small hands on the Pittsburgh side that we don't want to be gripping wet balls because it's could end up just ruining the entire game script in that one. But Jacksonville-Pittsburgh is interesting. I like that it's only a 41.5 point total, but we've seen it with Pittsburgh. They got the weapons. They got Deontay Johnson back. They also have George Pickens, and Jacksonville's defense has been susceptible. They've been playing better lately, but they still have some weak spots in that defense. And we got Pittsburgh. Where's Pittsburgh? Where's that game being played? Pittsburgh versus Jacksonville is being played. Let's see. That one's being played in Pittsburgh, which I like because Pittsburgh playing at home, it's going to be hard to beat them, even with a Jacksonville offense. And I think Pittsburgh will be able to put up some points at least against Jacksonville as well. So that one's going to be an interesting game. So let's dig into these games here. We'll check out Houston versus Carolina first. C.J. Stroud has been having a really good season. He's kind of been proving to be the better of those draft picks. He's got a tough matchup this week, but he's been scoring a decent amount of points. It's been a few weeks since he had a big game. He had 25 points against Indy, 20 points against Jacksonville, 24 points against Pittsburgh, and then the last couple weeks, New Orleans and Atlanta have pretty good defenses, and Stroud only put up 15 and 14 points against them. Jacksonville's got a pretty good, quarterback defense, which you know puts me more towards going a little bit different direction in this game than I think the field is going. I think Stroud is one of the highest owned quarter. Yeah, he's the second highest owned quarterback on the slate this week, which is interesting. I kind of like the Bryce Young side of this a little bit more based on matchup. It looks like Bryce Young has a slightly better matchup. This might be a game where we focus more on like just the weapons. It looks like Tank Dell's going to be back this week. We got Adam Thielen over on the Carolina side, who's been crushing it this year. We've been on him since like the early part of the season when Spread is Stare and I, we're putting him in the captain lineup in week 2 in the showdown slate he was in. Now he finds himself all the way up to 6,600. That's about twice the salary that it was, when we were playing him in the early days. But look at this. Look at these points, man. 31 points last week, 31 points the week before that, 15 points, 34 points, 20. He's been crushing it. And, just having a great year. Good for Adam Thielen, kind of proving the haters wrong, showing that a boomer can still play ball. We got Nico Collins, who's definitely interesting this week. Nico Collins hasn't had a big week in a while, but he had a little stretch there when Stroud was running hot too. You know what? Like the more I'm looking at this might be a game to fade. Actually, if it's going to have a bunch of ownership, I don't really like this. Like how the individual matchups are shaping up in this one. This might be a fade if it's too high owned. And it looks like Stroud is 9% ownership, which is second highest running back that I'm seeing on the Draftkings slate. I'm looking at, let's see, who's the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks look pretty safe for ownership. It might be a run heavy game, honestly. Like that's where the best matchups are in this game. And Miles Sanders. There's some controversy going on there with Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard because they brought on Miles Sanders to be their starting quarterback, but Chuba Hubbard has been doing well lately. Sanders has not done anything really this year. He's had one game where he had like 17 points. Chuba Hubbard, on the other hand, he's had 16 points last week. He hasn't really done anything either. He had 10 points against New Orleans. So, yeah, the Carolina side, like this offense is just like weak. But if you were going to play this game, if you think this game can go over the total and you want to take a side, I'd probably take the Carolina side because CJ Stroud is 6,300 on DraftKings, and he's the second highest owned versus Bryce Young is, he's only 5,100 and he is only 2% owned. Bryce Young, he's got, let's see what he's done lately. Bryce Young has, he's got 20 points a couple weeks ago against Detroit. He had a 14-point game against a tough matchup in New Orleans. Miami, he didn't do too well against in week 6, but they've had the bye in week 7, and now we're on to week 8. So Bryce Young might actually be interesting this week. So I take, I take that back. Bryce Young might be interesting. Houston's a little bit more susceptible to the quarterback than Carolina is, and then like the rest of the matchups, like they're not great, but Adam Thielen's been good. If you wanted to pair him with Adam Thielen, that might be a pay up to be contrarian type of situation. Let me see what Adam Thielen's ownership is this week. If he's high owned, Adam Thielen he's about 7% owned, only 16-point projection. Yeah, I don't know about this game. I'm not getting vibes on this game. I don't really like this game too much, but I could see it. I could see it going over just because of the rookie on rookie quarterback. You know that the organizations are going to want to show up each other, make sure the world know that they did the right pick. So we'll move on to Dallas versus the Rams. Dallas versus the Rams. Don't really see a whole lot I like in this matchup either. The only real matchup might be Jake Ferguson. Rams are giving up 14 points a game to the tight end position, which makes Ferguson a little bit interesting. But, we do have other tight end options on this slate. So not a whole lot that I like in this game in general. I'll probably just pass on Dallas versus the Rams. I could see, this being one of those games, though, that, ends up, being, competitive, more competitive than it should be, because we got Sean McVay going up against dopey Mike McCarthy. And McVay can put an offensive game plan together to attack this Dallas defense, even though the Dallas defense is really good. So don't sleep on that game. It's two teams that can score a decent amount of points. Just because the matchup's bad on the Rams side, doesn't make me necessarily hate it. Stafford's a veteran quarterback. He knows how to read a defense, and he has weapons. He gets that Puka Nacua, who's been a stud this year. Just a stud. Look at all these fantasy points he's scoring. 26 points last week. The only single-digit point total he had was against Arizona. He faced Arizona. He faced San Francisco. He put up 33 points against San Francisco's defense. Yeah, I kind of don't mind this game if you wanted to stack it. The pieces are a little bit expensive in this game, though. That's the only problem. But I could see this game being competitive, just given the players that are playing in it, and the Sean McVay having an ability to put together an offensive, or not Sean McVay with the offense, but just Sean McVay knowing a way to attack this defense, or them coming up with a good game plan for it. So I wouldn't sleep on that game. Let's see. Minnesota versus Green Bay. This is an interesting one. I don't like it a ton. We got Minnesota, has a good running back matchup. We did see Cam Akers come alive a little bit in this past week's game. He looked really good on Monday Night Football. Cam Akers has a good matchup, or the running backs have a good matchup too. 10 attempts for 31 yards, but he looked good. He looked good against San Francisco, and San Francisco is a tough run D. So, don't be surprised if at some point we see Cam Akers start to eat away more at this share. Madison, didn't do a whole lot against San Francisco either, but he looked good against San Francisco too. They just attacked San Francisco head on with that running game, and they actually got it going and really helped them open it up on the passing game. And they ended up just putting up a whole bunch of points on San Francisco. So that was a good game last week. Let's see. AJ Dillon Not really into the Green Bay side of the running backs here. I think the only other really good matchup that stands out might be Christian Watson. Christian Watson actually has a really good matchup. The Vikings are giving up 20.5 points a game to wideouts. I don't like Jordan Love. He's kind of showing his true colors lately. Jordan Love hasn't looked good, but I do kind of like maybe Watson as a one-off in this game because we know that Watson's gonna light it up eventually, and he's got a good matchup this week. So keep an eye on Christian Watson. Maybe keep him in your player pool, but there's not a whole lot I like in this game. Let's see, New Orleans versus Indy. This is another one that we can pretty much maybe not cross off the list, but we don't really have to go that hard on. I like the matchup for Derek Carr, but Derek Carr is just like he's just bad. He just sucks. Kamara's got a really good matchup, and he's been getting a ton of targets recently. We saw him play on, I guess it was Thursday Night Football last week or whatever it was. Yeah, against Jacksonville, Kamara got, let's see, 14 targets. He got 8 targets against Houston. He got 3 targets versus New England, 14 targets. He's had 14 targets twice this year. It just seems like this is the type of matchup too where they'll probably rely on him either heavy on the run game, and if not, if they do on the passing game, he's good there too. What's his ownership going to be this week? Kamara is the third highest owned. It's only 17% ownership. I don't hate that. He's got a really good matchup. Yeah, I kind of like Kamara this week. Indy, they got a tough matchup against New Orleans defense. New Orleans defense is always put up a good defense, and this year, all the positions are having trouble against New Orleans except for the slot receivers. So Josh Downs might be a guy to look at this week. Josh Downs is a guy that's been, kind of on fire recently. What did he do last week? He got 26.5 points last week, 13 points the week before that, 15 points the week before that. He's got a good matchup this week. What's his ownership going to be? He's way down there. Josh Downs is looking at about he's under 10%. So that's good. Josh Downs is a guy that you can have as a one-off. He's only 4,800 with all those good weeks that he's had. Yeah, Josh Downs is a guy I would be interested in this week for sure. Other than that, Kamara and Downs are the guys that I'd be interested in this game mainly. Slot receiver on the New Orleans side, actually has a pretty decent matchup too. That would be, Rashid Shaheed. He's got a good matchup. That's good, and he's only 3,900. So if you're looking for some salary savers, there's 2 right there. If you want to put like a skinny stack between Shaheed and Downs, I don't hate that. I don't hate like putting a stack between Kamara and Downs. There's some interesting pieces in this game. Derek Carr is too untrustworthy though. Like I wouldn't put too much trust in Derek Carr. He just looked awful on that last game we saw him in. New England versus Miami. This is highest point total on the slate. New England has, pretty good matchup all around. QBs are scoring 20 points against Miami. Wideouts are scoring 17.5 against Miami. Slots are scoring 20 against Miami, and tight ends scoring 14 against Miami. I think Jalen Ramsey is back, or he's close to being back. So, he shouldn't be too much of a threat in his first game back, if it is his first game back this week. But, something to keep in mind. Miami wideouts have a decent matchup. Uh, I'd look more towards Waddle maybe in this matchup because you know that New England's probably going to focus on Tyreek. Although I wouldn't let that deter you if you wanted to start Tyreek. Tua does not have a good matchup. New England's only allowing 14 and a half points to quarterback this season, and they're only allowing 15 points to the slot. So wideouts would be who I'd focus on the Miami side. If you wanted to do a Mac Jones stack, that would be interesting. Mac Jones is only 5K. He's shown some upside this year. He had 20 points last week, and then he had 28 points versus Philly. So this is an easy matchup for him. We know that they're going to want to put up points against Miami. The question is how is Tua going to do on the other side? Let's take a look at Tua's history against New England, see if there's anything that we can see there. Let's go to Tua's history versus New England, and we see that didn't do too much last time they played. He puts up about 250 yards and a touchdown against New England the last couple times he's played. This year, when they played each other earlier in the year, he only had 13 Draftkings points against them. So with Tua, I think this is more of a game where you just focus on pieces, or you do a New England stack and then run it back with maybe a Waddle or something like that. But yeah, Mac Jones has the better on paper matchup, and he's got some stacking options in. Maybe Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne's the only one who's really been doing anything on New England's side this year. Kendrick Bourne, 4,700 last week. Last couple weeks he's been okay. He scored 17 and 19 points. He scored 24 points week 1. So he's been on a little bit of a streak last couple weeks. So Kendrick Bourne at 4,900 is a guy that you could stack with Mac Jones, who's only 5K. That's a cheap stack right there. Run it back with Waddle. That would be interesting for sure. And then New England, you also got Hunter Henry as an option. Hunter Henry's only 3,700. What's he been doing this year? He hasn't done anything except for weeks 1 and 2. He did stuff. He scored 17 points the last game against Miami. Like Gesicki. What's Gesicki been doing? Gesicki's targets 2, 3, 4, 3, 1, 6, 3. What's Hunter Henry's targets? 3, 3, 2, 5, 5, 7, 6. Hunter Henry's been kind of ignored in the offense the last few weeks, but that could be matchup related. But you know what? I think maybe he had an ankle injury or something like that. So he was a little banged up the last couple weeks. So maybe that had something to do with it. But Hunter Henry would also be an interesting stacking partner for Mac Jones in this matchup. Let's see. Let's go on to New York versus the Giants. This is another one. The Giants defense has actually been pretty good. The Jets defense is always good. This is going to be, like a low scoring game. I can see this got the total on this game is, let's find out what the total is. It's going to be the lowest scoring one on the slate. 35.5 total, 3-point spread. This is a game that I would probably ignore. Who's got the best matchup? The running backs have the best matchup in this game. So I wouldn't put Saquon versus Brees both in there. But, I could see putting either or in this matchup. If you wanted to do a skinny stack, maybe you put Brees and you run it back with Darren Waller, who also has a good matchup with the Jets giving up 16 points a game to the tight end position. So Those are the only three guys that I'm interested in that game. Moving on to Jacksonville, Pittsburgh. This is a game that is a little bit more interesting to me, just because we know that Pittsburgh can put up points on occasion. The matchup itself for the Pittsburgh side looks pretty good. Like Jacksonville's given up 21 points a game to quarterback, giving up 20 points to running back, 24 and a half points to wideouts, and 14 and a half points to tight end. All those kind of fit in Pittsburgh's wheelhouse. I could see stacking Pickett. Pickett hasn't really had any big games yet, but he did score like 18 and a half points. He's only 4,900 for a salary. A guy with good matchup. And Pickens has a good matchup too. Pickens is still pretty cheap at 5,600 for a guy that, 18 points last week, 30 points the week before that. He's had another 26-point game. I could see Pickens going off in this game because, Jacksonville's not going to have any trouble putting up points on the other side. Lawrence is 6,200. Lawrence is actually pretty cheap too this week. They're playing in Pittsburgh. Lawrence doesn't have the best matchup, but Lawrence is more of an elite talent, so he should be pretty matchup proof. ETN's got a good matchup, and Christian Kirk has another good matchup. Christian Kirk keeps getting these matchups. The Jaguars are giving up 33 and a half points a game to the slot position, so that sets up Christian Kirk pretty well. Let's see what their ownership is. Is anyone on this game? Let's see. Trevor Lawrence is 5% owned, and Pickett is 4% owned. So that's interesting, especially with those prices. Trevor Lawrence, you could stack him with Kirk and ETN and run it back with Pickens if you didn't want to. Put Pickett in there, that would make a lot of sense, and slow ownership on there, and it's a cheap stack. So we do get cheap stacks in this game, this slate. It's a 41 and a half point total. At least that's what it was earlier in the week. Let's see what it is now. Jacksonville, 40 and a half now. So it's gone down, but 1.5 point spread. Those are the types of spreads that we like, with two teams with offensive firepower in them. Firepower being, Pickens and all of the Jags basically. Also Deontay Johnson being back. Looks like Zay Jones is out again, which is also good for Christian Kirk. It builds Kirk's case up a little bit. Kirk is only 5,900. Why is he so cheap? 20 points last week. I guess he hasn't I've been playing him in Showdown a lot, so those 16-point games probably seem a lot more valuable than they are. But he's been valuable in Showdown recently. He scored 20 points against New Orleans last week. I would look for him to continue scoring points this week. The weeks with Zay Jones out, I should say. Week 2 was one of those weeks. He scored 25 points. And then last week was another. He scored 20. So Christian Kirk, I could see him putting up 20 plus points this week. I like, Herbert, ETN. What's ETN? 7,200. He's the most expensive of the situation, and he's been on fire lately. Ever since we put him in captain against Buffalo a few weeks ago in that London game. 39 points in that game, 23 points versus Indy, 23 points last week against New Orleans. So, yeah, definitely ETN. Cam Hayward is still out, and because of that weakness in the run defense of Pittsburgh, they've been giving up 25 points a game to the running back position. So I do like Jacksonville stacks. Let's mess around with that a little bit. Let's put Lawrence in. We'll get Christian Kirk in there. We'll put an ETN. Run it back with Pickens. Pittsburgh's pretty good against tight ends, so I wouldn't waste time with Evan there. Let's see. Evan Ingram. Other running backs. Let's put in let's get our guy Kamara in this week. Kamara's pretty cheap too, considering he's been doing pretty well. If you wanted to go cheap at receiver here, this is where you could put in a guy like Downs, 4,800. Defense. Who's a good defense this week? Got the chart: Broncos versus Kansas City. We got Arizona, Baltimore. Baltimore is going to be the chalky team this week, even though that they have, a game that they should win pretty handily. Philly, Washington. That's another one we're going to like. Yeah, we'll get back to building this once we go through a few more of these teams. I just wanted to see what we could do. So let's go on to Atlanta, Tennessee. This is one. Drake London might be good. Let's see, Atlanta, Tennessee. Nah. What's the total on this game? Atlanta versus Tennessee is a 35.5 point total, another low total. But this one, it's just two bad offenses facing off against each other. Atlanta's been okay. Tennessee's in rebuild mode, might as well be. We got Will Levis starting his first game this week. Atlanta's defense would probably be more interesting, honestly. And, there's talks about, like shipping out Derrick Henry. I'll probably avoid this game altogether. I don't really see anything that I like. The slot is where they are weakest. Tennessee's defense is weakest. But they're also, they're weak against wideouts too. Drake London, he might be interesting. Tennessee, had a reputation for being, like pretty bad against wide receivers earlier in the season. But, like looking at the points, they're only giving up 16 points a game to wideouts, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is about like seventh and bottom 7 probably. Actually, like less than that. It's probably like bottom 12 or something like that. So they've gotten better. When I say bottom 12, I mean like the 12th most. So yeah, 16 points a game to wideouts, 9 points a game to tight end. There's really no other good matchup in that game. Like the running backs of Atlanta don't have a good matchup against Tennessee's run defense. That's, Atlanta's whole offense. So if they can't run the ball, they're going to force Desmond Ridder to throw it. So, Desmond Ridder's not the best quarterback. So, yeah, if they can't get the run game going, I don't really see the passing game getting going either. So I just pass on that game. I'm not interested in that game. Let's see. Philly, Washington. This is a good game. They play each other pretty tight, especially recently. Earlier this year, they had a pretty good close game. Let's see what happened in that game. That was a 34-31 game. 41.5 points put up by A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's been a monster ever since, like he yelled at Jalen Hurts on the sideline. 25 points the week after that, 41.5, 27.5, 23, 32.5. So he's been putting up a ton of points lately. But you got to figure that the pendulum is going to swing to Smith eventually. But you may want to ride the hot hand with AJ Brown. And the matchup that he has this week is a good one. Washington's given up 21 points a game to wideouts. On the other side, their defense is really bad. So Washington will be able to put up points, and A.J. Brown should stay active throughout the game. I also like Jalen Hurts. I mean, that goes without saying. Sam Howell actually has a decent matchup too, but what did he do last time they faced off against each other? Last time they faced off against each other, Sam Howell scored 20 Draftkings points. He's 5,200. You can do worse. I can see this game shooting out, so I don't hate Howell. Running backs, neither side has a match that stands off the page, but DeAndre Swift I'd like better. Like the Washington matchup is a lot worse. Philly's actually good against the run. So, yeah, I might lean more on the Philly side if I was going to take a running back. Otherwise, I like the Hurts to Brown stacks. And I like the wide receivers on Washington side. Dotson just has not done anything. He hasn't gotten anything going this year. Last game against Philly, he put up his biggest game was 13 points against Philly, but that's not going to cut it, especially at 4,500. We have better options. I like McLaurin better. McLaurin is only 5,300. That's still pretty cheap. And last week he put up 15 points, put up 14 points a week before that. Against Philly earlier in the year, he put up 23 points. What's McLaurin's ownership? Let's see. Terry McLaurin is going to be about 9% owned this week. So that makes McLaurin definitely interesting. And this is a game that I do like to stack. So let's keep that one in mind. let's do something a little different here. Let's get Brown in this lineup. See if we can find a cheaper running back. Let's get rid of that. Jeff Wilson Jr. Let me find out what the running back, chalky running backs are this week. Tank. No, Breece Hall at 5,900. Seems like the. Now I can see why he's so high owned. He's the cheapest on the slate, pretty much. Kareem Hunt might be interesting. The Browns. Jerome Ford was hurt last week. Seattle's been good against the run, though. Yeah, I might try to pop in Breece Hall in this lineup. Liked his matchup. If we go with a defense, Giants defense has been actually pretty good. Seahawks against PJ Walker is interesting. And they're pretty cheap at 3,400. Texans versus Carolina, but they're playing in Carolina, so I don't like it as much. You know what? The Colts playing at home against Derek Carr, who looked brutal in that last matchup. You know what? Atlanta too. God, there's some good cheap defenses this week. I'm gonna go with Atlanta. I think Atlanta's gonna have the best of these cheap matchups. So put the Falcons in there. Then we got 4,100 per spot for tight end. If we put Ferguson in there, I liked his matchup. Leaves us with 4,700 at the flex. What kind of correlation we got? Washington. let's see, McLaurin. If we wanted to put McLaurin in there, take Ferguson out. Any cheap tight end options? Let's see, Conku. There's not a whole lot of interesting cheap tight ends this week that I'm seeing, but I haven't done a ton of digging into it yet. Game log. What is Taysom this week? He's at 4K. That's a little too expensive. We need 3K guy. Well, maybe AJ Brown comes out and Smith goes in. Monty Smith. That leaves us with 4,300 as a tight end position. Schultz. What was that matchup between? Now Carolina had the better matchup on that side. Pittsburgh has a good matchup for tight end, but they are without our guy Fryermuth this week. Oh, Darren Waller has a good matchup. He's too expensive at 5,200. So yeah, I mean Ferguson probably be the good cheap go-to guy for a tight end this week. 3,600. Maybe we can bump up like defense at that point. Better leave one out. So at that point, at least you got some options there. That's pretty good. Pretty good lineup. We got our correlation with Jacksonville and Pittsburgh game stack. We got Philly and Washington in there too. I'm not too worried about jamming in the high totals this week because the high totals are so one-sided. Like we got New England. Miami is 9.5-point favorites over New England in the 47-point total. At least that was earlier in the week. Let's see what it is now. New England versus Miami is 46.5-point total with New England as 9.5-point favorites. And the other high point total is the Sunday night game. Other than that, like everyone else is just kind of in this range, gives us the perfect opportunity to get different because ownership's going to still accumulate on certain games, and the games that I like here, Pittsburgh versus Jacksonville and Philly versus Washington both seem like they're going to go a little bit overlooked. It seems like the chalky game is going to be this Baltimore-Arizona game. And, Lamar Jackson's got a great matchup, and he had a huge week last week. But, look at these other weeks. They're not going to need him to run. Like they're trying not to get Lamar Jackson to run. Like they're trying to prevent him from running. Last week he did it out of throwing. He threw for 357 yards against Detroit and 3 touchdowns. Had 9 rush attempts for 36 yards. The week before that, he had 62 rushing yards, only scored 18 fantasy points. So Lamar being chalk in this matchup doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Jonathan Gannon is a good defensive-minded head coach. I'm sure that he can come up with a game plan to stop that Baltimore offense, or at least slow it down a little bit. Even though Arizona has given up points this year. Let's see what Arizona's doing for giving up points this year. Let me check the defense here. All right, so they gave up 20 points to Seattle, 26 to the Rams, 34 to Cincinnati, 35 to San Francisco. Okay, so maybe they do give up a decent amount of points. 31 to New York Giants. So they do give up some points, but at the same time, this seems like a game where they take a lead. Baltimore takes a lead, and it's more of a Gus Edwards or a Justice Hill type of game. I don't know why Lamar is he's 8,100 too, and he's like 12% owned, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But 27 points a game to running back is what Arizona's given up. That's the best matchup that Arizona's given up. And Baltimore is not going to pass on an opportunity to run the football, I don't think. So Gus Edwards might be a good pivot off of that Lamar Jackson chalk this week. What is Gus Edwards' ownership? Let's see. Gus Edwards is at EDW. All right. Gus Edwards is at 3% ownership. So that's interesting. Yeah, I don't like stacking this game. I don't think Arizona, they're kind of fizzling recently. I did like Josh Downs like early in the season, or Josh Dobbs early in the season. He's kind of sputtered the last few weeks, but it was a good story for a while there. He was doing well. But I think his reality kind of caught up with him, unfortunately. Hopefully he gets another shot at being a starter. But Kyler Murray's going to be coming back pretty soon, and like Josh Dobbs' role as a starter might not last too much longer. Yeah, Edwards is interesting. Yeah, I just don't see. Marquise Brown has a revenge game. He's only 5,200. He hasn't done anything the last few weeks, but he's had a good little stretch there where he's scoring 17 points a game for 4 games in a row. So he's definitely interesting. Baltimore is somewhat susceptible to wideouts. They're giving up 13 points a game, but nothing that stands off the page. But revenge game. Maybe there's something there with that narrative, but yeah, every position on the Baltimore side has a good matchup except for the tight end. But I would be more interested in that running back position on the Baltimore side, because Baltimore is probably going to want to get the running game going too, and so if they have an opportunity to do that, they'll take it. Kansas City, Denver. Patrick Mahomes, we saw him put up a huge week last week against a team that wasn't putting up much of a fight, but they knew that they had to put up points against the Chargers because the Chargers can come alive at any minute. But now they're facing Denver, who's like dead in the water. I would not. They faced them in week 6. Mahomes put up 21 points. You can get that from a 5K guy. You can get 21 points from a 5K guy. Yeah, I'm not overly interested in Patrick Mahomes this week. It's not the week for it. I think they should handle Denver pretty easily. Travis Kelce. Kelce, if you got the salary for him, he's got a decent matchup. But the guys I'd be interested in would be Pacheco. Pacheco's only 6,100. He's getting kind of mediocre so far this season. A bunch of 15-point games. He had one 28-point game against the Jets. I could see Pacheco getting used in this game though, with such a big spread and being such a favorite against Denver. So Pacheco, definitely keep him in your player pool this week. Other than that, not really interested in the game in general. Like maybe Rashee Rice. They've been getting him going recently. He's only 5K. If you need a cheap guy, Rashee Rice, I could see having a game, but he's still a little thin. 17 points last week, but his usage is getting up there, And eventually he's going to be probably that Tyreek type of role in this offense where he's the go-to wide receiver. It's a matter of time at this point. We've seen him proof of concept, so it's only a matter of time. But let's move on to another game. Cincinnati, San Francisco. Playing in San Francisco. San Francisco's D's showing some vulnerability. I could see this game shooting out. I wouldn't sleep on it. This is a game where the matchup on paper looks bad for Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's one of those teams that can light it up at any time. Burrow's been showing some signs of life. A couple weeks ago, he had 27 points against Arizona, so he showed that he's looking better. And they beat Seattle last week. That was a matchup he should have done better, and we only scored 15 fantasy points. But don't be afraid to stack Burrow stacks this week. He's only $6K. He's still pretty cheap. What are we looking at for Chase? 8,100 for Chase. He got 55 points a couple weeks ago, and then 29 points a couple weeks before that. Where is he relative to the slate, though, in salary? He's the third most expensive. If he wasn't so expensive, this would be the perfect game stack. But he's too expensive. Purdy is looking like he's going to play from the last blurb that I saw, so you should be able to keep it competitive. Cincinnati's defense has been pretty good too, though. They really it looks like it'd be a George Kittle game on paper. George Kittle's got the best matchup with Cincinnati giving up 14 points a game to the tight end. But if I was doing a stack, Kittle might be a good run back. And Ayuk could be a good run back in a game like this too, because if it's going to shoot out, it's going to shoot out. Cincinnati has been pretty good against running back. Christian McCaffrey showed no signs of injury last week when they played against each other in prime time. So Christian McCaffrey is a guy it's just an expensive stack if you want to try to get these guys in. McCaffrey's at 9,200. 9,200 for 24 points. It's not going to cut it. And they had 14 before that. He had that 150 1-point game and then a few 20 plus point games. So, Christian McCaffrey looking a little overpriced in this particular matchup. But if you're going to stack that game, I think I gave you some cheap guys, some cheap options to use. Breece Hall's a good cheap, running back. Pickens, I think he's pretty cheap in this matchup at 5,600. Downs was another guy that we rattled off. So there's a few cheap guys scattered throughout this slate that you could fit into a lineup if you wanted to stack that Cincinnati San Francisco game. But that's it for now. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully that sends you in a good direction. I like that Jacksonville game. I'm going to be digging more into that. I think that's my favorite game on the slate. But make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure to check out the Showdown show I recorded with Spread a little bit earlier. That will help you out with tomorrow night's game. But good luck, everybody. Hit the subscribe and hit the like, and I'll see you next time.